people reaching out in faith, and there's a story about a fellow who has a t-shirt, and the t-shirt says, "Let's talk about Jesus." And his friend, who is knows he's not terribly religious, says, "I don't understand. Why do you walk around with a sweatshirt, t-shirt that says, 'Let's talk about Jesus,' when you don't even go to church?" Well, he says, "That's not why." He says, "It always gets me a seat on the subway." We have the stories today. There's two stories. Both scripture stories today are about reaching out to other people. The first story is the story of Acts, and that's Paul. After Paul's conversion, he decided he was going to go on these journeys to talk to people about his faith. And he goes on 3 or 4 journeys, depending on how you look at it. And this is an interesting story about him because, one, it talks about a different Paul than we might normally think of. Paul is usually considered to be a fairly straight-up guy. He doesn't have much use for women. And he, at other times, says women shouldn't speak in church. There's a strong belief that there are 2 or possibly 3 authors of the works by Paul, the works that are called Paul, simply because there are such discrepancies in his theology and his understanding. In this particular story, there's this guy that, as I said women shouldn't speak in church, and he is praising people like Lydia, who have started a church. It's a woman. She is a seller of purple cloth, which denotes that she had a fair amount of money. And so he is praising her for starting a community of faith. And if this guy really did believe that women shouldn't speak in church, that's kind of an oxymoron that he would want her to lead this fellowship of faith. But anyway, the purpose of this story is to talk about how Paul goes out with the others, with Barnabas and Timothy and the others, on these journeys where he's going to areas that have never heard of the gospel, and he's trying to share it with people. So he heads out to unknown territory to try and help people. The second story is the story of Jesus, and he is in the Gospel of John. He goes to this pool, and there's a man lying there who for 38 years believes that if he can be the first one in the pool after the water is stirred up, then he'll be healed of whatever his infirmity is. Jesus goes to this guy and looks at a man who has tried for 38 years. Most people would say it's a lost cause. He's been trying for 38 years. Don't worry about it. Jesus sees some potential and he says, "Stand up, you're healed." The guy does. He stands up and he leaves. He's healed. Jesus saw in that somebody that he could reach. Somebody who most of us would say is time is up. But both stories are people reaching out and trying to share the gospel of their understanding of God. So the question that I pose to you on this day is, who would you try to talk to about your Christianity? Of course, the other part of that story is, who would you not talk to? I'm sure there's some people you can think about that you wouldn't share your story with. But who would you share your Christian faith with? And I think the first part of that is to say, what exactly am I sharing? Because I think that that's a part that a lot of people are lost at. It's great to say I'm going to go and share my faith, but what am I sharing? Some of you remember the store Radio Shack? Remember Radio Shack? Radio Shack, and I believe it was January of 2014, declared bankruptcy. Closed their stores across North America. The reason they closed their stores was because they felt they had lost their purpose, therefore they were losing their sales. When you think about that, it's an odd thing. Here's Radio Shack. It's an electronics store, and they are losing sales in the electronics world. That doesn't make sense. They said, we have lost our purpose, and basically what we're doing now, we are just being a store where we sell cell phones. There's lots of other stores that sell cell phones. We've lost our purpose, therefore we're dying. Now the other part of that news, the reason it came up is because a couple of months ago, they have reopened 1,400 stores across North America. everywhere I go, people say to me, "What? I thought you guys were closed." He says, "I hear that statement 100 times a day." We're not. But he said the purpose of the way we reopened, or what we're looking at, we had to renew our purpose. We had to understand what was our niche in society. And so he says, we got out of the cell phone business, or at least most of the other, but I don't know if they sell them or not. But he says, what we did is we returned to who we were. We said, we're an electronics store. We should be selling electronics. We should be selling stuff that people can come in and look at something and say, you know what, I can put this together with this, and I can make something. A do-it-yourself store where people feel inspired, people feel potential. And we're reopening under those auspices. They're trying to say, let us return, let us find our purpose, and let us reopen with that new purpose. Do we as people know the purpose of the church? And I think that's a very valid question. 200 years ago, it's fairly straightforward, fairly cut and dry. You went to church partly because there was nothing else to do, but also you went to church because the church dealt very much with the afterlife. The idea of salvation, the idea of that you were going to continue your journey past this life if you went to church. That's not true anymore, in the sense that if you go to anybody, like that guy with the t-shirt, if you go to anybody and say, do you know anything about the afterlife? The normal response is, I don't care. Remember, there's a sign on Yonge Street here, and I always enjoyed that sign because it's not on Keith Sinclair's property. It's just about 6 feet to the south of Keith's property. The reason I say that is because for years, when we first got here, that sign was a Hooters sign. And I always thought it was at Keith's place. He would have gone out and cut it down, I'm sure. But the sign is just to the south. And I noticed there, maybe a year ago, the sign has changed. It's no longer a Hooters sign. It's, I can't remember the organization, but it says, life is a journey. Do you know your final destination? And underneath, there's a website that you can go to. And I have to admit that I can see that sign from our kitchen. I've never seen anybody stop and write down that website. That's not a popular understanding of faith anymore. It doesn't sell Christianity. If you have somebody come to your door and say, do you know where you're spending eternity? The average and the normal response is, yes, thank you very much, see you later. It's not a door opener for people to come and talk to you about it. That aspect of church life then doesn't work anymore. People simply aren't interested in that aspect of church life. The other part of church life has been through history. The church has been very forefront in social programs. I've mentioned this lots of times that the church has started the schools, the church has started hospitals, the church has started food banks, they have started recreation centers, etc., etc. But we're not at the forefront of that anymore. If you want to go to the hospital, if you're looking for the emergency department, you don't stop at the local church, you go on to the hospital. And any of those institutions are now run either by the government or by private enterprise. Even some of the other things that churches are known for. Remember, growing up, we used to have the church bail. Remember the bail we used to have? Anybody here familiar with the bail? We had bales in our church. Bail was where they collected clothing and then literally tied them up. I think it was with wire, actually. They tied them up and they shipped them overseas, these bales of clothing that would go overseas. We don't do that anymore. And if you are going to look at something like overseas mission, you might go through the mission and service fund. Obviously, a whole bunch of people did with our total there, but more likely you're going to go with an organization like Food Greens or somebody who's going overseas. If you're looking at environmental issues, you're going to look at Sierra Club or even Greenpeace or somebody like that, somebody who has some information. Any of those organizations are more advanced, they have more information. So the church really doesn't fill that niche anymore as well. So we're left with the question, what is it I'm sharing? What is the purpose of the church? When I answer that, I was thinking about the other day, the answer is the church offers an alternative view of life. The church offers an alternative way of life. We live in a very consumer society. We live in a society where success is tabulated by your bank account. It's tabulated by the possessions that you have. The bigger the house, the more cars, etc., the more of a success you are. The people who appear on talk shows are very often the wealthy people because they are a success. And consumerism is endemic to our society. It's something that underlines so much. The two latest indications for me of that, I find them humorous. And one is what they are now terming Easter presents. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you will be. Easter presents. Do you want your child to come downstairs Easter morning and not have a present under the cross? I don't know where they put the present. But anyways, real push that's Easter Sunday morning, your children should have wrapped gifts underneath something. I don't know where they be. I don't know if Santa Claus shows up at Easter or not. I don't know. But that's one of the big consumer pushes is this Easter present thing. And the other one was, I've heard about this. I don't know if any of you are, it was on the news last night. If any of you are familiar with what they are now calling push presents? Has anybody heard of this? Oh, you will. It was in the news last night. A push present. Sorry. When I explain, you'll understand why I'm laughing. A push present is a really obvious term. You are supposed to give this present to a woman after she gives birth. Now you understand why it's called a push present. And the reason it was in the news last night is because one of the Kardashian girls, I know, I can stop right there. But apparently her husband or boyfriend or whatever gave her a $1 million push present for her contribution to society. But the reason I raise those two items is because it talks about how prevalent consumerism is. Everything. Of course, with Mother's Day coming up next week, you're going to hear that famous commercial that comes through on one of the jewelry companies in Barrie, and they have a commercial for the last 3 years saying, show your mother how much you care. Buy her the $3,500 diamond pendant. Really? Okay, Mom, I don't care that much. It's this idea that everything can be purchased, and the more money you spend on something, the more important it is, the more money you have, etc., etc. Consumerism is very prevalent. And the difficulty with consumerism is that if you don't have a huge bank account, and as more and more people have smaller bank accounts, and as the world changes, there's a huge sense of failure for people. I don't have a large bank account, I don't have the possessions, my neighbors have something that I don't have, I'm a failure. Which in many cases leads to suicide, leads to depression, leads to people feeling that they are some kind of failure. We as a church have an alternative view of life to that. Today is May the 1st, and somewhere around the world people are celebrating Maypole Day. The first Maypole, at least the one I'm talking about, wasn't the first, actually the second, was on May 1st of 1628 by Thomas Morton in his community of Marymount. He erected a Maypole in 1627, but then in 1628 he erected the second Maypole, and for that he was arrested. He was arrested, put on trial, and shipped back to England, where I understand he spent the rest of his life in jail because he erected a Maypole. And we think, what difference does it make? Why would anybody be arrested for putting up a Maypole flag? The reason was because the Maypole flag symbolized a different way of life. Nathaniel Hawthorne, 2 centuries later, talking about that issue, said that Morton was making the choice between joviality and gloom as being the contenders for the empire. Obviously, gloom won. Joviality was not to be a part of it. The Maypole tradition was a stripping of the bark off a tree, and people danced around and frolicked, and they were people who didn't necessarily follow the rules and regulations. The empire didn't want that. They wanted somebody who was going to follow the rules and regulations. Morton's Maypole was a statement of independence, saying, I am not going to follow all the rules, and I'm not going to follow the rules of consumerism that are in our society. A few years later, literary critic Leslie Fielder says, what would have happened if the community, had survived? This beatnik colony in the 17th century New England wood, presided over by university bohemians. What would have happened to our culture if consumerism hadn't been in the forefront? Think what a different world we would have if there had been a different emphasis in our society. That's what we in the community of faith can emphasize, that we have a different understanding of life, that we have a different value of life. We need to look at that alternative way of life, because the world is changing. We live in a very different world now than we did. The emphasis, if you will, right now, the focus right now, and I hear this from various people, is a 35-hour work week. In some places, a 30-hour work week. What does that mean for people whose success is dependent on their work? What does that mean for the financial world as well? It also means we have a lot more free time. We have a lot more time to look after other interests, find other hobbies, but at the same time, there's more population, and therefore there is less resources that we have. And so some of the things that we assume, the directions we assume, even the consumerism we assume, isn't going to happen anymore. Not only that, but if your identity is tied with your job, there is more and more automation going on. I watched a video this week. Somebody a machinist sent me a video, and it's a machine that can lay block walls. It's got an arm that reaches out, grabs a block wall, or a block, puts it out, another arm comes out, spreads the right amount of cement, takes it up, sets it in place, picks up another block, and it can set up a whole cement block wall, I won't say in minutes, but pretty quick. What does that do to that whole trade? What does that do to that whole thing? A lot of people are going to be unemployed when they bring that machine out, and there was other machines going along with a whole bunch of machines they were showing off that replace the worker. What does that mean for our society? What does that mean for people who have their identity tied up with their job? Suddenly, they're not working. What identity do they have? That's what it's all about. We also live in a world that's changing globally as well. With social media and people are able to contact, I could sit here and talk to somebody from the pulpit, somebody in Australia, and find out what the weather's like or what's happening politically in Japan, wherever. We have a whole different world, and there was a survey that came out just yesterday, I believe it was. It was a world survey done. What I mean by that is they went to a bunch of different countries and did the survey. And the question was, do you see yourself as a nationalist or as a global citizen? And a few years ago, everybody would have seen themselves as a nationalist. But I thought it was significant that this survey, 13% of the people who responded said they saw themselves as global citizens. What direction does that call us? If you're thinking about nationalism, and so often that people are motivated to do things through nationalism, if 13%, and it's a growing number, see themselves not as nationalists but as global citizens, that's a whole different idea from who we are and what we are. And so our identity as people is changing. And the question is there a hunger for an alternative way of life? Yeah, I think there is. I think it's a big hunger. Sometimes it's kind of humorous to me. A lot of people will tell me I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. I hear that sentence several times a day through various ways. People, and I understand what they're saying. They're saying I don't have any use for the religious institution, but I still have a calling for spirituality. And I think that's a relevant question or a relevant statement, because it says to me there still is a hunger out there for people. And of course the number of statements that I see online all the time attributed to other people, and because I have a little information about the Bible, I can look at it and say, no, that was Jesus that said that first. When I see some of the ones that say, you know, John so-and-so says, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. It's like, Okay, he didn't say that first. I know the guy who said that first. It was Jesus. But that's taken away, and so we have these. And people repost this stuff all the time. The Dalai Lama is out there all the time with expressions, or somebody's giving them these expressions like, give first, give to others first, and expect nothing in return. Okay, again, that was Christ who said that. Nothing is permanent, and love and compassion are the keys to world peace. These ones came up last night. And again, fits right in with the Christian faith, but says that we're not reaching it. There is a real hunger for that spirituality out there. Christian values should be ones that help people understand an alternative point of life. An alternative point of life is that you're a human being, you're valuable, regardless of your finances, regardless of where you've been or what you've done or what you believe or what your lifestyle is. You are a valuable human being. And I think that's something that's very needed in our world. I think that's something that we should share. And I do believe that that is what Christ was saying and Paul was saying when they were going out into the crowd, saying, you are a part of this fellowship. We're opening up doors. We're opening up our lives for the love of God to be with you and the love of other people to be with you. I think that's the message we need to give as an alternative lifestyle. The question that I began with was, who would you share your faith with? And I think the answer to that is anyone that you see struggling with their acceptance, anybody you see struggling with life, with their idea of success of life, anybody who you see that they think is a failure, that they think themselves a failure, anybody like that is somebody who needs to hear those words, that you are a valuable human being in the eyes of God.